I rise today to honor the life and legacy of a devoted public servant, educator, and proud Kansan, my friend Bob Tomlinson, who passed away in February 2025 at his home in Kansas. Bob Tomlinson lived a life defined by service to others, whether in the classroom, the Kansas State House, or around the family dinner table. Bob believed deeply in showing up for people, listening carefully, and leaving every place a little better than he found it. From an early age, Bob demonstrated a passion for public service and civic engagement. In fact, his family recalls that his first campaign began in junior high school when he ran for student council. That sense of responsibility to contribute, to lead, and to serve never left him. As a young man, Bob attended Boys State, worked with Republican U.S. Senator Bob Dole and Democrat State Senator Anthony Hensley, and built a bipartisan spirit that would become a hallmark of his public life. Bob understood that public service was never about headlines or partisanship. It was about people, especially those who felt unheard or overlooked. Bob earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Kansas and later a master's degree from Baker University. He went on to spend nearly 2 decades working in education, serving as a social studies teacher and counselor at the Shawnee Mission School District Alternative Education Program at Horizons High School. Those who knew Bob understood that he had a special heart for students who needed extra care, extra patience, and someone who believed in them when much of the world often did not. Bob did not simply teach history. He taught young people that their lives mattered and that they could still shape their own futures. Bob's commitment to his community naturally led him into elected office. He served on the Roland Park City Council before representing Kansas' 24th House District in the Kansas State House of Representatives from 1993 to 2003. During his decade in the legislature, Bob earned respect on both sides of the aisle for his thoughtful approach, his kindness, and his ability to build genuine friendships across political differences. He later served as Assistant Insurance Commissioner for the state of Kansas from 2003 to 2012, continuing a career centered on protecting and serving Kansans. And if you knew Bob, you knew there was always a joke. There was always a story. In every situation, he could find a way to lighten the mood and make people feel at ease. He never met a stranger who would not later become a friend. Bob loved Kansas deeply. He traveled to every corner of the state multiple times during his years in public service. He cared about rural communities, small towns, working families, and the people whose voices too often went unheard. He believed government worked best when leaders listened first. But of all the titles Bob carried, the title he treasured most was family man. Bob and his beloved wife, Carol, shared 38 years of marriage. Together they raised 2 sons, Philip and Christopher, and later welcomed a granddaughter, Audrey, who brought Bob enormous joy. Family traditions mattered to Bob. Every summer, the Tomlinsons would pack up and travel together to visit historic sites and state capitals across America. Thanks to Bob's love of history and their travel, his sons can say they visited 48 state capitals and our nation's capital here in Washington. Those trips reflected Bob's belief that learning never stops and that the best memories are made together. And while Bob could discuss history, public policy, or baseball with anyone, his granddaughter, Audrey, may have known him best for yet another talent entirely, his unforgettable Donald Duck impression, which he happily performed for hours just to make her laugh. That was Bob Tomlinson, accomplished but humble, serious about service but never about himself, a man whose greatest joy came not from recognition, but from bringing joy to others. On behalf of so many people in Kansas and of this U.S. House of Representatives, I extend my deepest condolences to Carol, Philip, Chris, Megan, Audrey, and the entire Tomlinson family. May they find comfort in knowing that Bob's life made a lasting difference in the lives of so many others. May he rest in peace.